Economies of scale. In less than 10 minutes, let's try and do it. Economies of scale are defined as reductions in average cost of production by increasing the size of the output being produced. So as firms make bigger and bigger quantities of output and they change all the factors of production that are being used to produce the products, they can anticipate lower average costs. Of course, the total costs rise, but per unit of output, or unit cost, will fall. And that's because of economies of scale. I'm going to quickly go through the 5 kinds of economies of scale, internal economies of scale, that businesses may hope to anticipate, hope to experience as they raise their output levels. And first of all, let's start with purchasing, which my experience tells me students understand most clearly. Purchasing economies of scale occur when firms buy large quantities of raw materials and they get them, therefore, at a lower average cost. So a large supermarket buying thousands and thousands and thousands of cans of Coca-Cola from Coca-Cola will get them at a lower cost per can than a little mini market that only buys 50 cans of Coca-Cola. Okay, so the price is lower if you buy in large quantity. A business like IKEA that buys tons and tons and tons of wood every day to make furniture gets their timber at lower costs per ton of wood than a small-scale carpenter who perhaps only buys 1 ton of wood every week. Okay, so buy in large quantity the raw material, you get it cheaper, and that reduces the cost for the large-scale producer. Secondly, financial. Big businesses get better deals from banks. They are seen as less of a risk. Plus, as far as the bank's concerned, it takes just as long to organise a $10 million loan than it does to organise a $10,000 loan. It's the same amount of paperwork. So they prefer to do the big deals because for an hour's work, let's say at the bank, they're going to make a lot more money from a $10 million loan to a big business than the return they get from an hour's work lending a smaller amount to a small business. So the less risk of a big business, plus the fact that it's a bigger loan and more interest to be collected, means that the big business is going to get a better deal from the bank. So they can anticipate perhaps slightly lower rates of interest. A financial advantage for large businesses. Third economy of scale, managerial. Small businesses, let's take a small restaurant, it's owned by someone who has always wanted to run a restaurant. So these small businesses, like small restaurants, the manager is the one and only manager. They've got to run everything. They've got to hire people, so they've got to do the personnel side of management. They've got to keep the books, so they've got to be good on finance and accounting. They've got to organise the marketing for this restaurant, if we're sticking with that example, and so they've got to be a marketing manager as well. They've got to do all these things, and production manager. They've got to decide what's on the menu, etc., etc. So it's very difficult for a small business's manager to cover all of these areas of management. There's going to be a weakness there somewhere, and that's going to cost the business money. But large businesses, they can have specialist managers in every area: marketing, finance and accounts, production, human resources, and so they get much more efficiency and therefore lower costs. So big businesses, expert managers in every area, bringing down the costs as efficiency rises. So that's another advantage. Fourthly, technical. Technical advantages accrue to large businesses because only large businesses can afford to buy the best technology, the large-scale machinery, which in the long run brings down costs. Small businesses can't make such use of large-scale machinery. They end up having cheaper, smaller machinery, or even renting machinery, and in the end that's more expensive. So the bigger the business, the more they can be cost-effective by making use of large-scale capital technology, which ultimately brings down costs per unit. Finally, marketing. Large businesses are able to spread the cost of marketing over a larger quantity of sales and therefore get more effective marketing by yet increasing or impacting price per unit less significantly. Alternatively, if a small business and a large business both decide to include 10% of price as a marketing cost, then the big business selling many thousands more of the units being sold can afford a better quality of marketing and a more effective level of marketing. So maybe it's only big businesses therefore can afford very effective television marketing. Small businesses can't afford that kind of marketing, and so they can't get the advantages of it. So large-scale businesses are the ones that can afford and spread the cost of the most effective but most expensive types of marketing. So 5 areas of where large businesses are able to get an advantage. Of course, extremely large businesses may suffer from diseconomies of scale. You see that on the board, diseconomies of scale, which is when average costs start to rise because of extremely large-scale production. Average costs can rise for 2 reasons when businesses get very, very large. Firstly, workers become demotivated. They don't feel that they're making a difference. They're one tiny, tiny, tiny cog in a very big wheel, and so they're not going to make any difference, so they don't try as hard. They're more likely to be absent if they're feeling a bit sick. And of course, when many, many workers are feeling like this, it really does have a detrimental effect on the efficiency of labour. Secondly, communication in very large organisations becomes slower, has to pass down many levels in these huge organisations, and of course can become distorted, either by accident or even deliberately. So the remoteness of workers lower down the organisation from the bosses means they don't get the communication so well, plus they feel demotivated because they feel insignificant, and so they don't work as hard or as efficiently. So that's a problem for very large businesses, and that can actually lead to businesses demerging and breaking themselves up into smaller units to avoid this economies of scale, just as other businesses growing try to achieve economies of scale. Finally, the concept of external economies of scale, because these are all internal. External economies of scale benefit a business who may receive lower average costs when something outside of the business, but in their industry, changes. So when the industry grows, there could be, let's say, a better organisation of support for the industry, supply of raw materials and so on, and that benefits a business within the industry. So external economies of scale are enjoyed by a business when the industry it's in grows. Okay? Well, I don't know how effective that was, but it's a big topic to cover in such a short period of time, but the key point are these 5 economies of scale and the potential problem for very big businesses of diseconomies of scale. Okay, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.